Imagine an economy where nobody knows what anything is really worth. A government decides how much steel to produce, how many factories to build, how much grain to distribute, how many workers should go into agriculture, construction, or industry. The problem is simple. How do you know whether these decisions are correct? In 1920, the Austrian economist Ludwig von Mises posed exactly this question. His argument became known as the Socialist Calculation Problem. Mises argued that without private ownership of the means of production, you don't have genuine markets for capital goods. And without genuine markets, you don't have meaningful market prices. And without meaningful prices, economic planners lose one of the most important pieces of information in an economy: opportunity cost. If you build a railway, what resources are you sacrificing somewhere else? If you build a steel factory, would those resources have produced more value in machinery? If you use land for wheat, is that the best use of the land? The market answers these questions through prices, profits, and losses. A business invests. Consumers respond. Prices change. The entrepreneur discovers whether the decision was good or bad. Mises's argument was essentially, you cannot efficiently calculate an economy if you remove the mechanism that generates the information needed for calculation. And this became one of the most powerful intellectual arguments against centrally planned socialism. Not 50% socialism. Not 50% capitalism. Because the answer isn't arithmetic. It is institutional. We need to separate two things that are often confused: market allocation and economic power. Markets are extremely useful for discovering information. They tell entrepreneurs what consumers want. They tell investors where resources are scarce. They punish inefficiency through losses. They reward successful experimentation through profits. But markets also generate accumulation. Successful businesses grow. Capital generates more capital. And eventually, accumulation can produce concentration. And concentration can produce power. And once economic power becomes sufficiently concentrated, competition itself can become weaker. That creates a paradox. We need private property to make markets work. But we also need competition to prevent private property from becoming concentrated enough to undermine those markets. So perhaps the real objective isn't to eliminate capitalism. It is to prevent capitalism from becoming concentrated, and this gives us a very different definition of the mixed economy. The mixed economy shouldn't mean, let the government control half the economy and the private sector control the other half. That's not the point. The better model is, let markets perform the functions they perform best. Let prices discover information. Let entrepreneurs experiment. Let consumers choose. Let inefficient companies fail. Let investment follow opportunity. But then government performs a different function. It protects property rights. It enforces contracts. It prevents monopolies and cartels. It maintains competition. It provides public goods that markets may underprovide. And it creates a social safety floor for people who cannot successfully compete in the market. This distinction is crucial, because efficiency and distribution are not the same thing. A market can be highly efficient and still produce an income distribution that society considers unacceptable. So society can redistribute part of the income generated by the market through taxation and social policy. But there is a huge difference between redistributing some of the results of markets and abolishing the market mechanism itself. The first can preserve incentives. The second risks destroying the information system that makes decentralized economic decisions possible. And perhaps this is where the real golden average lies. Not between socialism and capitalism, but between centralized power and decentralized power. The institutional objective should therefore be something more sophisticated. Decentralized economic decisions, competitive markets, dispersed opportunity, strong institutions, and a social safety net. In other words, markets should determine as much as possible. But society must make sure that the market remains a market. Because a market without competition gradually becomes something else. And perhaps this gives us a new way of looking at Mises. Mises asked, how can society calculate without market prices? The modern question should be, how can society preserve market prices without allowing economic power to control the market? Those are not opposing questions. They are two sides of the same institutional challenge. And perhaps the lesson of the last century is not that socialism was completely wrong and capitalism was completely right. The deeper lesson is that concentrated power is dangerous, whether that power sits in a government ministry or in a corporate boardroom. The economic system we should be searching for is therefore not one that eliminates markets, and not one that worships markets. It is one that understands why markets work, where they fail, and what institutions are necessary to keep them competitive. Because the real golden average is not halfway between capitalism and socialism. It is a system where prices can speak, entrepreneurs can act, competition can survive, and economic power cannot become so concentrated that it silences everyone else.